it seems like a lot of what you do and a lot of those interviews, those types of things and stuff like that, like it deals with like blackness and like social justice and those things, but it also like you also kind of reach out to like social justice of like all and like everything. In regards to those interviews, can you kind of talk about that and like how each person kind of went into that? Including, do you think that includes like white liberals?
It's Cassandra, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm really excited.
Where are you from?
The Virgin Islands.
Ah, which one?
St. Croix. Have you been?
We got a lot of different weather here, huh?
Oh yeah, this is something else.
Did you even have winter clothes?
No, I actually got most of my winter clothes from a thrift shop. Like when I first came, like downtown, I had to buy all of it. Good evening, listeners, and thank you for tuning in to KRUI 89.7 FM. I'm your host, Cassandra Santiago. You are now listening to a special News at 5 interview. I'm in the studio with Ana Navarro, who is a Republican strategist and political analyst for CNN and CNN in Espanol. Taking a look at the things that you are and things that are part of your identity, and this was actually a question that was submitted, what's it like being, and I'm sure you've heard it many times, what's it like being a Latina Republican and immigrant when there's so much anti-Latino and immigration refugee rhetoric coming from the right?
Well, that's not the Republican Party I grew up in. George W. Bush got 44% of the Hispanic vote just in 2004. We're not talking about the Jurassic period. It's not like dinosaurs were walking the earth. This was, just a few years ago. So it's the party certainly has changed a lot. And I stay a Republican because I wanted to go back to that. I want both parties to fight for our vote and our support. I want them to earn it. I don't want one party that takes us for granted and another one that feels free to antagonize us.
My name is Cassandra Santiago. I identify as Afro-Boricua. Boricua is another word for Puerto Rican. There's just a couple of them, but that's really one of the most common ones. And then Afro, just, like African.
Okay.
Black.
Did you always know that you would identify as that?
I didn't always use that specific word or that specific phrase, I guess, to describe my identity, because I grew up in a predominantly black environment, and also I think the second group was probably a combination of Latinos, like Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, that kind of thing, those kind of ethnicities, and so for me it was always understood that I was black. I knew, I was born in the Virgin Islands, being Puerto Rican, just the history of colonization and slavery and all that, I know, but it was never something that I felt like I needed to really say all the time. It was just in the back of my head. Of course, I'm very light-skinned, so people would question it all the time. People didn't even think I was Puerto Rican. So
Question it here or question it everywhere?
At home. So
Okay.
I had people question it at home. Really just girls just being ignorant. And so they'd make their little comments, and I'd be like, no, I'm black. I'm Puerto Rican. Or people would be like, oh, you're the blackest Puerto Rican I met. And it wasn't only until years later that I realized that's such a it's such an ignorant statement, because it's essentially the same thing. But I still have to do that, here. I have to clarify, I'm black Puerto Rican. It's something that doesn't come naturally to people, again, especially because of my appearances, my hair, my skin color, whatever it may be, so.
Right. Next we got my girl Cassandra.
You're funny.
All right. We have Cassandra here. Yes, sir.
Cassandra is a senior at the University of Iowa, currently studying communications and journalism. You've probably heard her sometime on Crew. She had a series called Sherb Speaks that she was very good advocate on. She also is the co-founder of Melanin Voices. So some of you might be familiar with that publication that we had going around. Fun fact about her, she's an extremely active member in Sigma Lambda Gamma, which is her baby.
Let's just talk about your sorority then. So to me personally, you once expressed interest in like being a part of like the historically black ones like Delta or AKA. So what made you choose the multicultural one?
So I actually wanted to go to a historically black university or college, and I let people convince me that I wasn't gonna get scholarships, and so I was like, oh, I'm just not gonna apply, biggest regret ever. But I had somebody like angrily say to me like, why are you in this like Latina sorority? You know that space is not even for you. And I was like taken aback by it because first, we're not a Latina sorority. Our founders are Latina, and so we're historically Latina based, but we're a multicultural sorority. And so I was taken aback by that fact. And the second thing, it was just it was one of those moments where I was like, so if I join an organization that's predominantly something besides black, does that make me less black? And so it really, I feel like people were more confused or more offended by the fact that I didn't go Divine Nine sororities. And the reason I didn't like pursue it with kind of like the passion that I did Sigma Lambda Gamma was just because I was still coming into this discovering myself and my like race and ethnicity, and kind of trying to let them coexist, because a lot of people make me feel like I have to be black or Latina, like I can't be both, like I need to choose. Yeah, I think it's really interesting because multicultural and historically black or any type of ethnicity focused sorority or fraternity like have a secrecy to them. Obviously Divine Nine has much more secrecy, you know, they have their however they operate, and they've been around for years, so they've had the opportunity to really figure out what works best for them and their organizations. But that is an intimidating factor. Mm-hmm. And so I guess that was also might have been one of the reasons why I was like, I don't even know, how do I go up and ask like, can I be Latina and black in your sorority? And if I am, like, how will I be supported in that space? So I don't want to say that, oh, they would have immediately like not let it live. It was an assumption that I made, and it was an assumption that I ran with, and it was a assumption that led me to dig deeper into Sigma Lambda Gamma, because I just felt like I could, some of the sisters that I had met there were really like quick to like answer questions, or like, you know, were really open about, you know, whatever I had to ask. So I was with it, and you know, I ended up being like, yeah, I want to be in a space where we're all different, and I'm not only forced to learn about myself, but I'm forced to learn about other cultures, like, I don't know, you know, other Latina cultures like Mexican or Latinx, Mexican or Peruvian or Salvadorian, but also, you know, African American or some type of Asian, whether that's Indian or Chinese or Japanese, whatever it was, and I like that. So just go ahead and learn that we are not a Latina sorority. As a Latina sorority. We are not a Latina sorority.
Let's talk about the N-word. So how
distracting, and like I just don't.
And this is the first time we're practicing with words. We've been practicing instrumental.
Oh really? Okay, yeah. Good. So your cues are not words; they're beats.
They're beats.
Okay, perfect.
How do you feel about it? Who can use it? Who can't? That type of thing.
So I've heard so many arguments when it comes to like the N-word. I think that it's unfair to say that black people shouldn't use it, because it's a word that it has a very oppressive history. It has a very violent history on part of white people. So I think it's very unfair to say that black people can't take this word and use it as a word of endearment within themselves. I do believe that only certain people should use it. So I do believe that if you are not black, you should not be using the N-word. Like, I think that it's one of those things that the black community has taken and kind of refocused it to be a term of endearment, to be a way that they connect with other people. And I think that white people have no type of say in saying if they should be able to use it or not. If a black person tells you you cannot be dropping the N-word, I don't care if it's in a song or in a reading or whatever it is, then you should not be arguing against that. And I think it goes for the same for also Latinx people who have no black roots, then you also should not be saying it. Non-black people of color also have a history of playing a part in the oppression of black people. So it's a thing for me where, yeah, I use it sometimes, but I don't use it all the time because the participation that my Puerto Rican community has had in oppressing black people. When I first started, I was very, not angry, but I was very disappointed. I don't know the right word, because a lot of the resistance of me identifying as Afro-Latina really came from the African American community on campus. It felt like it kind of felt like a box, and if you didn't do certain things, or your blackness was questioned. For example, I can give you a really great example. Actually, I'm not familiar with African American Thanksgiving. I actually became familiar with it through going to one of my friends. Thanksgiving.
You can say it's me.
To Alana's. My first African American Thanksgiving was actually with Alana, and I was like, this is stuffing. I have such a different idea of stuffing.
And I made you eat greens.
Yeah, and greens and all that. You know, I got introduced to what chitlins was. I didn't taste it, but when I go back home, it's something completely different. And so it's something completely different because of the Puerto Rican, Dominican, but also because of the Crucian. A lot of the traditions that we have really come from our African ancestors. Like, you know, I can sit here and talk to somebody from Nigeria, and we'll bond over our love for plantains, or the similarity in our music and calypso and, you know, soca and reggae, and all of that really extends from, you know, our African ancestors. And so for a long time, I wasn't so much so angry, but I was disappointed, and I was kind of defensive against the African American community on campus and as a whole, because I felt like they were pushing me out when, like, they were one of the only communities that I fit in with on campus. Until I had conversations with some of my African American sisters, and they were like, you cannot blame a group that has been marginalized, that has been oppressed, that has been thought to think black and white, to think not black as far as the entire black diaspora, but black as in African American black and African American black traditions and history and that kind of thing. You cannot be defensive against them and be angry at them, because this is what they have been taught. It was just something that I had to learn, and something that I've had to learn to navigate, and just be very loud about what my blackness looks like. So